Good morning. Welcome to Growth and Grace. This morning we're going to be talking about keeping your thoughts under control because sometimes, you know what? They just start going rampant and they spin you completely out of control. And then before you know it, you're way off track, way off course, and you're not feeling your best mentally, emotionally, because you're just like trapped in these thoughts. You're captive to your thoughts. So we're just going to dispel that a little bit today. And we're going to get into a few ways that you can actually capture your thoughts instead of your thoughts capturing you. Cool? Cool. So here's what this can look like. I'm going to give you a recent example of how this started throwing me off track and why I wanted to talk with you about it today. So yesterday, I was having a great conversation with a couple friends. We were just talking and laughing and having a wonderful time after this incredible experience that we had just had, this ladies' conference that we were just at. So great, so fired up, pumped up, like excited. Just certain things were said during the conference that like, oh, wow, a total weight off your shoulders. You know, if you've had that experience where you just like newfound hope. Cashmere just jumped up here. And so I just had finished at that conference, and it was so great that I'm having this fun conversation with a couple girlfriends. And then another friend comes up and we start talking and we start diving into this girl stuff. And she's telling us that she's recently been having conversations with a guy that she'd sort of written off as far as like dating. And she's all excited about it and she's telling us about it. And then come to find out, I don't know, we've all been in situations like this, but are you ready? Come to find out, it is a gentleman that I had dated earlier in this year. And not a huge deal, and we weren't falling in love or anything, but it's just one of those moments where you're like, oh, shoot, that might change things. What is this going to look like? Oh my gosh, what if they start dating? What if they get married? You know, your thoughts it's phenomenal how quickly thoughts can just take off and go down this whole track. And so I didn't say anything to her there in the moment because it would have not been an appropriate timing. You know, certain things are best done in private and not in front of a group. And anyway, but what was interesting to me was noticing what my thoughts were doing and where they were going and all of this, like, oh my gosh, what if this changes our friendship? What if this completely, like, what if we can't even see each other? Like, it went down this whole track of not logical things, but our thoughts. Man alive, they're going to go there to places that are not logical, to places that are not, like, they'll pull a little bit of logic and then they'll run with it in this tangent direction. And like when you become conscious of what you're thinking, it can jar you back into reality going, oh my gosh, I really took that way out of proportion. So anyway, honestly, that kind of threw me for the rest of the night. I was just like, oh man, I don't like that. So what was cool, there's a couple things that are cool about this. One, it opened up an opportunity for her and I to connect and talk about this. And two, it allowed me to recognize, maybe there's still something there that, not something there with the guy, but like maybe there's something emotionally that still needs to be healed from how all of that happened and how that ended. And so it's like it brought a new awareness to me that I thought that I had already healed from. So thoughts are really helpful because they let us know what's like inside, if there's any anxiety or nerves or fear or disappointment. Like, our thoughts can be clues. They can be really helpful clues to help us recognize what is it that we can be aware of that we can then work on. Because had I not heard that and heard her share that, and had I not been there and got that thought cycle that I like went on that tangent, I wouldn't have been aware of like, oh, maybe there's still something there for me to work on. So this is great. So I'm excited about that. And then what it also did was it allowed me to practice what I'm going to teach you today, which is like capturing your thoughts. So if you guys have ever heard of the Bible, yeah, there's always great wisdom in there. And there's like, literally, I cannot think of a time or a situation that I've been in where there hasn't been something totally applicable to me in that present moment. Like, it's so real, and it's the living word of God, and it's literally living in that it is not just from 2,000 years ago. Anyway, quick preface. So in 2 Corinthians 10:15, and I'm going to just read this to you because this is like talking about capturing thoughts and keeping them captive. And it says, we are destroying speculations and every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God. This is talking about your thought life. And we are taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. So what I love about this is when you know the truth of God, when you know who he is and what his promises are, you can quickly recognize when a thought that comes in or when someone says something to you, when it's a lie, when it's not the truth. And I'm speaking to lies, meaning they are not the truth of God. So there are definitely people out there who are going to tell you their truth, and a lot of the time it's actually a lie. Without getting into all of that, what I want to focus on is the keeping your thoughts, taking every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. So what that means, and what I got to practice yesterday, was thinking through, like, when I recognized I was having those thoughts, first of all, you got to recognize that it's happening so that you can put the kibosh on it. Once you recognize it's happening, once you find yourself spinning out, like if you've ever been driving and you've hydroplaned on water, once you recognize it, like, you get into response mode to handle it. You don't just keep driving and spin further out of control, right? You engage your motor vehicle skills and you get yourself back into alignment in the lane on the road. So similar thing with your thoughts. When you notice yourself spinning out, it's time to click into response mode and not reactive. Oh my gosh, these thoughts, they're true. Whoa, what if? Take a moment and do something, if it helps you, which I recommend trying a few different things, to do something physical that actually interrupts. So you are literally causing an interrupt in the thought. So if it's snapping or saying something out loud, I live alone. I have the benefit of being able to talk to myself without anyone knowing, unless I tell everyone. So I do literally say things like, okay, Susan, wow, that was really dramatic. Or, Susan, that's so not true. You know that's not true. And just to get myself acknowledging that what I was just thinking is not serving me. So recognizing it, obviously, step number one. And then once you recognize that you're interrupting it, right? So you're like putting the kibosh on it. You're reminding yourself, wait a second, I don't want to think like that. And then the third thing you're actually going to do is really, like, legitimately call out that thought and not just say, well, that's not true, that's a lie. Do that. In addition to that, you're going to actually replace it with something that is true. So for instance, I'm going through my mind going, like, before I had recognized and interrupted those thoughts, I was going through all these what if scenarios. And oh my gosh, what if this, what if that? Like, what if he tells her something about when we were dating that isn't true, and then she has this misconception of me, like all these irrational things. And he's not even a bad guy. Like, he's not going to do that. But in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, what if? Such a dangerous game, first of all. But what I was able to do was to shift into, and what I was actually speaking out loud, because again, I think it's helpful to get it out of our thought life and actually speak it in to existence using our tangible verbal words out loud. And so if you need to go lock yourself in your bathroom, or you need to go walk on a private mountain somewhere to have this conversation out loud, by golly, go do it. But say it out loud and actually practice. And so what I was saying, what was working for me was to say, God, I know your promises for me, and I know that I'm not going to end up with a man that is not my man. And so if he's not my man, then if they date or don't date or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, just being that real about it. And it wasn't, I'm just being super transparent with you, it wasn't an immediate like, oh, life is butterflies again, life is rainbows again, this is so incredible. What it did do, though, was it helped re-engage the truth, it helped me lock back into what is actually true, because I do know that. I know that I'm not going to wind up with some guy that's not my guy. And I know that I'm not going to wind up with someone who doesn't appreciate and value me and communicate with me. And, I look back at what this dating relationship was, and I think, I know that's not the best God has for me. Like, I just know it. And it's not from an entitled place. It's just, we've all been in relationships, whether they were romantic or friendships or work relationships, that were not the best that God had for us. And sometimes it works for us to be able to communicate through and dive deeper into that relationship and bring health to it. And sometimes you walk away from it because it's not going that direction. So whatever the case, if you can recognize and acknowledge the actual truth and knowing it when you read God's word, I mean, there's so many promises in there of who he is and what he's doing. And when you know that, you can recognize the lies. So recognize your thoughts. Just going to recap these steps real quick so that we can implement this starting today, because I feel like it's every day that this needs to be practiced. So recognizing, first and foremost, when you find yourself spinning, you can recognize it when you start feeling sick to your stomach. I literally was starting to get a little bit nauseous yesterday because I was getting so worked up about this situation that's not even a situation. Like, it's not even a thing. And I was already finding myself getting like, So recognize if there's a physical symptom, that's often an indicator that something's off. If you find yourself all of a sudden feeling like emotionally heavy or depressed or anxious, that's also a sign typically that our thought life is taking us on a journey, as opposed to us capturing our thoughts and not letting them lead. Because it's dangerous when your thoughts lead. It's dangerous when your feelings lead. That's not a great spot to live from. So recognizing it and then interrupting it, remember, and doing something physical to interrupt it, like snapping or saying something out loud. I've found in my own personal experience that if I just try to stop thinking about it, right? We've all had that when someone says, okay, just absolutely do not think about this thing. It's like all you can think about in that moment, unless you get yourself out of that moment. So like maybe turn around, do it like a 360 turnaround, because it'll change your vision. Do it with your eyes open. Like, it'll actually change what you're looking at. It'll change what you see. Something else can get your attention. Like, do something physical to interrupt the thought once you recognize it. So recognize it, interrupt it, and then you're going to speak out what the actual truth is, because what you were just thinking and spinning on isn't real. Remember, it's your thought life. It's your imagination going haywire. So our imaginations are great, and they can be used to build huge visions for our life that we can step into, that we can use to impact so many people. And it's wonderful. It's an awesome tool when we are in control of it. But if we let it control us, it can really take us off. So recognize, interrupt, and then speak out what the actual truth is. And I do recommend actually speaking it out. Use your mouth and speak the words out and start living into what is actually true. And let me tell you, I had to do this a lot of times. I woke up in the middle of the night, and when something's on your mind and you wake up in the middle of the night, how is it that it's the first thing that pops to your mind and you're like, oh, really? I'm already not sleeping and now I'm thinking about this. And then, so it's especially something to be practiced when you are tired and you want to be sleeping and you're not sleeping and you're having these thoughts that you don't want to have, and you're getting all worked up when you want to just be like calm and peaceful and sleeping. Then this is an excellent time to practice these techniques. So recognize that you're having a thought, interrupt the thought. Sometimes it's being annoyed that you're having a thought is a great way to address it. Just be like, I do not want to freaking be having this thought right now. What else would I like to think about? Like, sometimes it's just go in a different direction with it. Just get yourself off of that thought process. And it will take practice, and it will take multiple times. It's not just going to disappear after one time of you capturing the thought. Thoughts are sneaky little buggers, and they will escape from the little, handcuffs and chains that you put them in. So let yourself just know that it's an ongoing practice, and to keep doing it, because the more you do it, the more you practice, the less power your thoughts are going to have to knock you off track, and the more control you're going to have to be able to take your thoughts captive and be in alignment with God's truth. So with that, I'm going to wrap this one up, and I will see you next week, every Thursday, every single week, 6 a.m. Pacific, 9 a.m. Eastern, for another episode of Growth and Grace. We'll see you then. Have a great week.